We have some cold weather coming, so it's time to get the Canna Bulbs dug up, or the rhizomes, whatever you want to call them. I thought I'd just take this chance to talk about how I store them. And the first thing I do after I dig them up is I wash them off real good. I've tried to shake as much dirt as I can, but with these good healthy roots, it's holding quite a bit of dirt still. So the next thing I do is just take a garden hose and wash as much of that dirt off the rhizomes as I can. And when you do that, you don't want to get too rough with them. You don't want to make a bunch of dings in the rhizomes or scratches or bruise them or whatever. So I'm going to wash these off and then we'll come back. Now I washed these off a little bit, but they still have some dirt on them. And if you got a large clump especially, you're going to have to separate them. So I just kind of pull them apart like so. And then I clean them up some more. And after I get them washed off real good, then I cut all these little roots off. I use my little same pruners I use for pruning my tomatoes. It works real good for this. I just trim as many of those roots off, and then once I get some of those trimmed off, I can clean some more of that dirt off that's kind of stuck between these rhizomes. And then once I get all that done, we'll come back and take a look at what we got. Well, on these I've cut most of the roots off, and I went ahead and washed them again. Then the next thing I do, there's probably a lot of different ways you can do, store your Canna Bulbs, but I'm just showing you the way I do it. If you have a better way of doing it or a different way and you want to share it in the comments, feel free to do that. But I just like to cut any green growing stem as close down to the rhizome as I can. And then anything that looks like it was, about ready to sprout, I just go ahead and leave that unless it's got green on it. If it's got any green on it, I cut that off. I just do that to all of them. And if it looks like it needs a little more washing, I go ahead and wash them off one more time after I get this part done. And then I think the most important part about storing your Canna Rhizomes is curing them. After you get them all trimmed like I'm doing now and cleaned off real good, then find a good dry place for them to cure or dry for at least, 3 or 4 days. Make sure they're good and dry before you store them, though. That's the key, I think. You don't want to put them, try to store them with any moisture on them, or you're going to end up with some mold, or some of them will probably rot. You don't want that, so just keep that in mind. I'm going to go ahead and trim all these up. I got probably another 6 or 8. And then I'll wash them off one more time, and they're ready to cure. It's a little bit windy out here today, so hopefully the wind noise won't be too bad. These have been drying for about 4 or 5 days, and I think they're pretty well dry now. And what I do next is I have this plastic grocery sack with some pine shavings in the bottom. And I like to just put in a couple so I can kind of keep them separated a little bit. Put in some more pine shavings. And the pine shavings I just get at a pet supply place. A lot of your big box stores, the pet department will have it, or any pet store. It's just used as bedding for small animals. And after I add some more pine shavings, then I add a couple more of the rhizomes, and then more pine shavings. And I just repeat that process until I have all my rhizomes in there. I'm making a little bit of a mess because of the wind, but it won't hurt anything out here. And then once I have all of my rhizomes in there, I just tie the top like so. And these will stay in the closet. I put these in an exterior closet. It's up to the outside wall. I keep the door closed, and I'm guessing the temperature probably stays in the upper 50s, low 60s in there all winter. It's in the dark. And I just kind of put them out of sight and out of mind. And then once it's around February or so, I start checking them every couple of weeks just to make sure they're not sprouting, because occasionally if you get some really warm weather and that closet starts to warm up a little bit, they'll actually start to try to grow. So if they get too far along in that process, you need to do something like pot them up and give them some place to grow other than the closet. We usually put ours out somewhere in the middle of April to the 1st of May. And that's a pretty safe time to do it here. But if for some reason we have some freakishly warm weather and they actually start to sprout in the closet, then I might put them in a pot, put them under some artificial light. But usually they'll go till probably mid-March or late March before I notice any kind of activity like that. And usually when it happens, it might be just one or two rhizomes that start to try to grow, so it's not usually a big deal. But anyway, that's how I've been doing this for years, and it's worked pretty good for me, so I thought I'd share it. Be sure to let us know how you store your Canna Bulbs or rhizomes. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. We'll see you next time.